everyone, welcome to today's vlog. Today we're going through my third and final hand from the PokerStars Players Championship 25k buy-in in the Bahamas. While overall this was an amazing tournament, very unique, had over 1,000 entries, was a freeze out, had almost half the field were satellite entries. Really cool event in a lot of different ways, very well ran. Anyways, third and final hand. This hand comes from the end of night of day 1. There are 5 posted hands left in the night. My table draw is very difficult. There was only one kind of fun player at the table. Everyone else were either high stakes online players or high stakes live players or both. In this hand history, it is big blind 1200. I have 75k to start the hand. I'm in mid position 2 with the 8 of spades and the 8 of hearts. In mid position 1 is a very good high stakes online theory player. He has 100k to start. He opens to 2700 at big blind 1200, so he opens to 2.2 times the big blind, which is the typical open there. So when he opens from MP1 off of 100 bigs, or sorry, off of 100k or 80 big blinds, this is what his opening range is going to look like, about 19% of hands. I'd expect that he'd fold anything that are these, like some of these partials, and then maybe fully open like 6-7 suited, 7-8 suited, 9-8 suited. So probably at like 18.5% of hands, give or take. Maybe with the last 5 hands of the night, maybe he's a tiny bit tighter, but I'd expect somewhere around 18.5 to 19%. And versus this little open range, so we're going to treat it like I'm the effective stack here and look at it this way. So MP2 versus MP, this is my overall range here. So white, fold, yellow is call, which if we look at pocket eights here, it is 60% call, 40% 3-bet, which is in brown. Red is all in, so I have no jams. The fact that eights can go either way here, on this tough of a table, honestly, I don't care which option I take. I don't think it really matters that much. The upside of 3-betting is I get to play a heads-up pot in position. There are probably some hands that I force folds that have a lot of equity versus me, like ace-10 off, ace-jack off, king-queen off. So 3-betting certainly does have some merit. The other upside of 3-betting is the hands that I have completely dominated. He folds 0 of them. Like if he opens deuces, I 3-bet, he's going to call them, or 4s or 5s or 6s, so on and so forth. The upside of calling, though, is if, say, I hit a set and someone else hits a top pair or something equivalent or even better, I can possibly double up. In these types of spots, I lean pretty heavily towards calling because of that, but 3-betting here is a very viable option. So I call, and the big blind also calls. Okay, so with the big blinds defend, the pot size is now 9,900. The flop is the 6 of spades, the 4 of hearts, and the deuce of hearts. I think with the big blind and us being 3-handed, I think the likelihood that mid position is going to c-bet goes way up. Heads up, they're a lot less incentivized to bet than 3-handed. 3-handed is way more important for them to clear up equity, to push good equity. So it's important for them to deny equity to other players, and it's important for them to build their own equity with their stronger hands. So 3-handed spots often play wildly different than heads up spots. That being said, I do think that when he acts here, that his range for betting probably isn't too wildly different than if we were heads up than if we were 3-handed. So I think that's important for me to consider in this hand. So what ends up happening is he continuation bets 3k, so he goes 1/3 pot. And I kind of think when he bets here for 3k that he probably doesn't have the best hands in his range. I could be wrong here. I just think that most good theory players, when we're 3-handed on this type of board, if they're going to bet their strongest theory, if they are going to bet their strongest hands, they're probably going to upsize, even if theory doesn't really. I do think it's kind of close though. So when he does bet a 3rd pot, while I think he could be kind of capped, I am not certain about that, and I'm going to be continuing very carefully. So he bets. I have 8s here with the 8 of hearts. as you can see here, my options are pretty viable between calling or raising small. I kind of figured that since maybe being a keyword, he might have weaker parts of his range, that he's probably going to be pretty apt to run double and triple barrel bluffs. So I just want to keep in all of his bluffs. I figure if I raise flop, yes, I clean up equity and maybe the hand plays a tiny bit easier, but I don't think it's the most profitable way for me to play the hand. Honestly, I would be completely okay with raising here, but I decided to call. Honestly, thinking about it, maybe raising is better, especially three ways, because if I raise, the big blind is probably pretty apt to fold out a lot of equity. If I call the big blind, it's not going to like check raise super light because, you know, my calling range is just very strong here. So I think maybe because we're three-handed, it's probably very important that, or it's probably more important, I should say. It's probably more important that I raise flop. Yeah, I could actually see three-handed this call being a mistake, actually, the more I think about it. So, yeah, I definitely messed up this hand. I think if we are heads up, which is kind of how I treated this on the street, that my call is ideal. But, yeah, I definitely messed up this hand, the more I think about it. So, yep, okay. Good rule of thumb. When you're three-handed, especially against good players, probably better to isolate, and it's probably better to clean up equity if you can. By clean up equity, I mean both push the good equity, because my 8s is probably the best hand, but also deny equity to others, which I really think that denying equity to the big blind is probably one of the most important things in this hand, especially on their stack depth. So I should have raised flop. Anyways, as you can see here, if we are heads up, we can take either option, which is kind of what I was thinking in game. I figured I could call or raise and it probably didn't matter too much, and I wanted to play in a lower variance manner. But that line of thought made me not consider how important it would be to deny the big line, which is why I made this mistake. So I call instead of raising. Big blind fold, so we are heads up to the turn. Pot size going into the turn is 15,900. And the turn is the 7 of hearts. So I now have an overpair, a gutter ball, and a flush draw. And he checks to me. So I think when he checks to me, I'm probably supposed to either check or go 2/3 pot or pot. I would assume that if I bet, the main bet size that I get to pick is 2/3 pot. And maybe some pot size bets sprinkled in. I assume I go quarter pot 0% of the time, and I assume I check back a very high frequency, maybe in the 50 to 60% range. So the reason why I'm confident that I don't go quarter pot here, good general rule of thumb is if you are in position on the turn or on the river, you do not bet under half pot. There are exceptions to this rule. It's almost always incredibly static boards. And even then, it's still pretty rare. It's like, I would guess 80% plus of the time, if you're betting in position on turn or river, you're betting half pot or larger. So he does check. If we look at my 8s, I assume it is largely a check. It is largely a check. And what rule of thumb did this just pull up?
And I concede I was wrong about the thing.
Good.
However.
No, however, just be wrong. Just stand there in your wrongness and be wrong and get used to it.
I'm pretty sure the reason why we get to go quarter pot here is, what I just say, static board. I wouldn't necessarily view this as a super static board though. So it's kind of surprising to me that we get to go quarter pot 12% of the time. To me, like the really static boards is, let's say the turn was the 6 of hearts. That is a super static board because straight flush, quads, everything's already there. That's why I figured that 25% pot would not be picked. But essential flush comes in. It's probably treated similarly to a lot of board pair spots too, where since it's now a static board texture, we get to pick smaller sizes more frequently. So what I just learned is, hey, flushes are static enough for small bets in position. Honestly, that's like the main upside of going through spots like this, and also the main upside of me talking out ahead of time of what I think is likely going to happen in terms of the majority of my range is if I let you guys know, then I am actively holding myself accountable for how well I understand the situation. And that's going to make it that much better when I do see a spot that I completely and totally fucked up, like this. Oh, well, maybe not completely, a tiny bit. Okay, well, actually, Kale's now going to pop in and say something along the lines of, well, Ryan, you did say that you fucked up the flop, so you probably did fuck up this hand overall. And he would be right.
Oh, that's terrible.
You seem kind of psyched.
No, I'm bummed.
Anyways, back to the spot. So I checked bat, which if we look at pocket eights here, and if we look at my exact type of combo, just 8 of hearts in my hand, we can bet this, we can bet this, and we can bet this. Having the 8 of hearts in my hand, well, the upside of checking back is, and this is why I check back in game, I get to see the river. My hand has a lot of equity. This is amazing. If I bet and I get raised, that really sucks. So that's why I check back. But the reason why we can bet it is we get to turn it into a bluff on the river, which is great. Anytime you see that's a mixed decision like this, all decisions in here are equal, are essentially going to be pretty equal expected value. How to figure out what is best in game, or best decision that we should make in the real world. Anytime you see that decisions are very close together, you now need to figure out how is your opponent going to be making mistakes against you. So how do I think my opponent's going to be making mistakes here versus me? I actually think they're going to be overfolding on river. So I'm pretty confident that they're going to be overfolding on river, which means I messed up this spot again, and I should actually go 2/3 pot here and probably go 2/3 pot on river, and just turn this 8s with the 8 of hearts into a bluff. I see, like when I was initially played this hand and thought about this hand and everything, I thought I played it completely and totally fine. And right now we've seen that I played pre-flop well, I think. Flop, I completely butchered. And then turn, I've slightly butchered. Yeah, I would still say slightly butchered. Maybe not a complete fuck up, but definitely a bit of a butcher, because I do think if I barrel here, I'm going to be generating a lot of river folds that I shouldn't be. So mess up the spot. So obviously I check back. The river is a very interesting card. It is an 8, giving me top set. When it gives me top set, my hope is that he checks, because if he checks, I get to bet this for value very happily. Instead, what does he do? He goes 2/3 pot. So obviously we're calling all of our overpairs for the most part, bluffing occasionally the ones that have hearts in them. Pocket 8s here, yeah, very easy call. Not only do I have top set, which is a good hand by itself, also blocking flushes. The only annoying thing is I'm not blocking any bluffs. Yeah, so this is just not a call spot. I tanked, rethought through the hand, went, can I fold to this guy? Came up with the answer no, and then I clicked call. I wasn't thrilled about this call though. I don't think it is a wonderful call by any means. It is a wonderful theory call. Theory, this is a snap call. So versus good players, I'm always taking this as a call. But that being said, I'm still not super thrilled about it. I called and I lost to pocket 5s with the 5 of hearts. I think if I raise flop, I end up checking back turn, and then I might find a river fold. So I probably lose a little bit less in chips, or I lose a little bit more in chips. But more importantly, if I raise flop, I fold out a lot of big blind equity. I fold out a lot of MP1's equity, and I give myself more opportunities to win this pot. And then on turn, if I bet turn for 2/3 pot, and then I turn it into a river and turn it into a bluff on this river, which I actually would have checked back this river anyways. So I would have lost about the same amount if I played it that way. So I guess either way I was going to lose this pot. Doesn't really matter. That being said, what does matter is I learned from this hand history. I learned that I fucked up when I had no idea that I did, and y'all get to see Kale troll me. So on that note, thank you for watching. Stay safe and healthy out there, and best of luck at the tables. See ya!